Are people more productive working from home? The answer is yes, but not necessarily and not always. So this was an interesting question to ask when Myths of Work first came out, writing it in 2016 and 2017, and now looking back at the last 5 years of remote and home work, because the environment is just fundamentally different. What we know about remote working, and especially working from home environments, has really changed because the conditions under which the majority of people work from home have also changed, right? Initially 5 years ago, or even looking at the research from 10, 15, 20 years about homework, was generally a very small minority of people who worked from home, and it was people who worked from home for very particular reasons, specific reasons, and it tended to be people who really wanted to work from home. So when we look at the research on people who work from home because they want to be working from home, because they chose to be working from home, and had a lot of warning and preparation about how to set up that environment, it's fundamentally different than what we know about the research from people working at home over the last couple of years. Because with COVID lockdowns and people required to work from home in a lot of cases, sometimes with not a lot of help or support, advice, or preparation to set up their home working environment, we know there's a lot of problems or difficulties, challenges related to working from home that are addressable, they're solvable, you can look at them and fix them, but we know that they exist for a lot of people, and they're problems that we wouldn't necessarily have seen in the same way before home working was as widespread as it was in 2020 and 2021. So home working can definitely be more effective. We know that giving people a few things like independence and autonomy can fundamentally improve performance in the workplace. If people have independence, can manage their own schedules, they've got fairly clear frameworks for performance management, they understand what they need to accomplish, what they need to get done in their work, they've got a structure for doing that, they have the tools, the resources, the support to do that, they'll do very well. They tend to be much more productive. But there's all sorts of things that can reduce productivity in home working, and we pretty much know what they are now, and there's ways that we can look to address that. So one of the barriers to being productive, being effective in home working is the home working environment. It's very different for people working at home who have a large house, a lot of space, they've got good broadband, they probably got a good desk set up, they might have a separate office, separate room, separate space set up as their working environment. People who have that have a huge advantage when it comes to working from home. You know, if you're living in a flat share, or you've got a crowded house, or you've got a lot of people, you've got kids who are at home, you've got a large extended family at home, and you don't necessarily have space for independent work and focus, then it can be a lot more difficult to work from home, work remotely. So if your company is hiring a lot of people who are going to work not in the office, but they may not have a good home working environment, they may not have the space, the tools, the tech in their house, at their home, to work effectively, often it's useful to provide some sort of subscriptions or plans or access to different remote working spaces or independent working spaces that are meant more as office environments, because some people are very able to create a home office environment in their home, and some people really are not. So if the person isn't going to be able to have a constructive, effective, focused home working environment, it's going to create a lot more barriers to productivity and effectiveness than someone who doesn't. So it's one of the things you need to think for when you're designing home working environments for people and supporting people in doing that. So what a lot of really good companies do that support that kind of work is having budgets and having tools and having resources for people who are working from home to make sure that whether people need the equipment or the broadband or the connections or the software in their homes to work effectively, or they have some sort of independent workspace, maybe outside of their home but close to their home or at a convenient location where they can get access to those tools and resources that they need to be effective. Sometimes having a budget for that and having some support in helping someone figure out how to set that up can be really useful. Someone who isn't used to home working, it might be useful to have a guide. Here are the things that you need to work effectively. Here's the software, here's the type of laptop we recommend, here's the programs, the software, the tools you need to install on it, here's where to get support, here's where to understand how to use these things, here's everything you need to know to do the work you need to get done for this company. And for people who don't have access to that type of setup, then there's different tools and resources and supports you need to develop a good independent or remote working environment versus a home working environment. So when we look at things like that, we can say, okay, people working from home under the right conditions absolutely can be more productive than in the office, but it's not true for everyone all the time. So then we want to look at what type of work people are doing, right? Is it work that it lends itself to being completed independently? Does it need to be collaborative? If so, what type of collaboration needs to be done in person in a shared physical space? Which of that can be done online? So when we're looking at remote and home working now, it's really about making sure the environment fits the task and what needs to be done in the job, and then working backwards and saying, okay, what's the best environment for this, and how do we make different environments most effective? Because we know from recent research the growth in home working, independent, remote, autonomous, hybrid working, the growth of remote, independent, and home working over the last few years has really meant that it's shown that it's possible, it's feasible, and under the right circumstances, it can be more productive. So the demand from workers to have different and flexible working arrangements is massive, and it's going to be a huge, huge task for the next years and really decades to figure out the best balance and the right way of structuring work in the way that's best for employees, meets employee demands, and can also be most productive and most effective for both employers and employees.